Bespoke line charts, spiral radial column chart. So we've already created our column charts, but how can we get this to spiral, like a staircase, increasingly get further away from the center? So this is what we're going to create. This is going to be very similar to our radial column chart. However, there will be some slight changes to the way we do data densification and the values that we bring in, and also the formulas and parameters. But enough of that. Let's open up Tableau desktop and let's get started. So let us start by loading in our Superstore data source. Let's click on Microsoft Excel. Let's double click on Superstore. And now let's drag orders onto the query panel. Beautiful. Firstly, we are going to do some data densification. So we're going to double click the logical table to expose the inner tables. Now I want us to go to Excel or equivalent spreadsheet editor, and I want us to type in position 0, 1. Very, very simple. I want us to copy this and paste it into our model, into our logical table as a model. Now you'll see an error, but let's click on create join calculation. Type in 1. Let's click OK. We will do the same for the other side. In essence, we are creating a Cartesian join between our data source and our model. We'll call this model. With that said and done, we can now go to our worksheet and start building out our visualization. But first, I want us to create two parameters. These will be used for controlling our data visualization. The first parameter, I want us to name as @spacing. So this is the space between each of the lines. Let's leave it as an integer, and let's leave that as 5 for now. Why not? Right click, let's show the parameter so we can engage with this. The second parameter is going to be called @size. And again, this is just another control parameter. Let's add that to our data visualization. Let's show this parameter so that we can see this. Now, with most things, as you know, when we're drawing, we are going to create our legendary index, -1. We definitely need that. We are going to create a wrapper for position. So right click on position, create. Let's call this TC position. This is going to be a Windows max position. Nice and simple. Now something that we haven't done before, we are now going to create a TC starting point. First, we don't want this to start at 0 because then it will be a very weird effect. You can explore with this. But I found that if we start at 10, it actually creates a much nicer, smoother spiral. So we're going to start at position 10. So not at the center at position 0, 0, but a little bit higher. And to create the spiral, I'm going to take our index and divide it by 100. So therefore, our starting point for our lines will always be 10 plus a little fraction. So it increases each and every time. That is the starting point for our lines. Let's click apply. Let's click OK. Now we are going to create our X and our Y objects. As we've done before, let's call this X. This will become very familiar now. If max position is equal to 0, then sine radians index close. However, I want us to multiply this by TC starting point. Else, the same thing, sine radians index, close it up, This time I want TC starting point plus 1 and end. So therefore, based on your position, if it's 0, just put a dot at the starting point. If it's 1, give us a plus 1 for now. Let's click OK. I am going to duplicate this for our Y object. However, I'm going to change this to cos. As you know, we're drawing circles. We have a mixture of sine and cos. Let's take X onto that X onto the columns. Let's take Y, drop that onto rows. Looking good so far. I want us to take order date, drop it into filters, filter on the year, and select 2020 and click apply and OK. Now I want us to change the mark type to line. Beautiful. I want us to take the order date and drop that onto detail. Right click on that pill, and we want the exact dates. We don't want anything else. Lastly, take position and drop that onto path. Right click on this and select dimension. Almost there. As a last step, I want us to, you can see we've built one line, it's getting there. Right click on columns, go to compute using and select order date. You can see it's built a lot of lines now for each of our order dates. Let's go to Y, do the same thing. Go to compute using and order date. As you see, we've built our little grid now. Pretty nice. We haven't applied any real data. We've just drawn this pattern. We are using the order date and taking that into account. One last thing I want to do is take order date, drop it into rows for just a moment. Don't worry about the error. Right click and ensure that show missing values is selected. Now bring it back onto detail. So there will be some interesting gaps, but that's okay for now. Now what I want us to do is to start moving on and now applying our data to this. So let's give that a try. Let's go to calculated fields. As always, TC cells, Windows sum of cells. We have to divide this by 2 because of our data densification. So let's click OK. Let's duplicate this. And let's rename this total cells. Create calculated field. We are, as always, going to create a percentage, which is just going to be our TC cells divided by TC total cells. Nice and easy. Now with that said and done, we are now going to apply this to our X and our Y, and hopefully we'll have some fun while we do this. So let's right click on X, let's go to edit. Instead of having the +1, we are now going to replace this with TC percentage multiplied by size. But that allows us to, instead of moving at one position, apply the percentage and also adjust that using size. Let's click apply. Do not worry about it for now. Click OK. Let's do the same with Y. Put brackets, TC percentage, multiply by size. Don't worry too much for now. Now let's modify our X and Y table calculation. Firstly, let's select order date for both. Now let's go to X and edit the table calculation. Under cells, I want us just to remove. Voila! With the nose, click on this and just filter the data. We don't want to see that. So you can see we've built this out quite nicely. We can increase the size to 1000. How about 250? So we can enjoy playing around with the size as much as we want. Now the last thing to do is get spacing into the game. I want us to right click on index, go to edit, and now I want us to multiply this by spacing. And now you can see we can space out or control the distance between our points. Let's leave this as 2. And as you can see, we've built our spiral radial column chart, where each point represents a date. Now it's just about building on the cosmetics. But what I want to do is take TC cells and drop that onto color. Now you can see the real powerful points. Although let's make this a bit more, how do I say this? How do we make this stand out a bit more? Let's change it to blue to red. Let's reverse this so the reds stand out. Let's keep the size at 100 for now, because we don't want to overflow into the other rows. Let's actually increase the size of the mark a bit. Since we've created a bit of space, we may as well make this stand out a bit more. And from here, we can hide the Y, hide the X. Let's rename our sheet as Spiral Radial Column Chart. Final bit of formatting. Right click on the canvas, go to Format, Format Lines. Let's remove our grid line, our zero line, and our axis ruler. And now, so that we can get to a final look, I'm going to change the color to orange and blue. I do like the red, but I have to admit the orange and blue is one of my favorites. Increase the spacing to 3. And there we have it. We've now built a spiral radial column chart in Tableau using data densification at the data source level. We've also used table calculations and parameters to make this extremely dynamic. So the key is, I'm sure you're noticing repeating patterns. That is the key to all of this. The repeating patterns will help. And the more you do this, the more you'll realize how it works, and the quicker you could apply this to your own data visualizations. So feel free to do the lesson again, ask questions. The main thing, however, is to try to keep each lesson and try to learn the techniques, to question every calculation, but above all else, have fun, and I'll see you in the next lesson.